Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller, and this is a podcast for your personal evolution. In this episode, the raw transformation from feeling and experiencing life deeply. Steve Smith is my guest in this episode. He's a friend of mine. He runs Potter's Inn along with his wife, Gwen. They provide soul care. Much of Steve's time is spent with people running large organizations, from megachurch pastors to Fortune 500 CEOs, people who, as Steve says, they live a lot of their lives in the whitewater of life. And living this way takes a toll on your soul. Well, years ago, I actually argued with Steve. I said I was living in a way to keep myself strong so I could endure the constant whitewater of my life that I thrived on. And I did. Until I couldn't, until I burnt out and caused plenty of collateral damage in my life and in my soul. Well, recently, Steve sent me a book of poetry he had written. He's published a lot of books, but with poetry, he feels he can say more with less. The book is called Greening, Poems in the Unfolding of Our Lives. And the focus is on unfolding through the seasons and reasons of our lives, he says. Steve has walked intimately again with so many people, and dramatically successful people, as our culture tends to define success. But Steve walks with them as their lives unravel and their identities unfold. In recent years, Steve has had some losses in his own life, gone through some of his own unfolding. And as my own life has unfolded as well, I brought Steve on to discuss some of these concepts that are in this book of poetry and just from his life experience as of late. Greening is a term Steve relates to our flourishing, vitality, well-being, and emotional health. As a spiritual director and speaker and author, Steve offers soul care and spiritual care through so many avenues. You can see those and find him and find the book at pottersinn.com. So coming up next, Steve and I take a walk through our lives and discoveries and look at just transformation and the deep meaning of life. Well, Steve, as you know, I just got back from coffee with two dear friends who you've spent time with, and how often your name comes up. And it's generally this. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
It's me testifying to, remember that time when Steve Smith was talking about living in the whitewater and that you can't always be in the whitewater. And I argued and said, now, wait a minute. I'm living my life, Steve. I'm strengthening myself so I can always be in the whitewater. And I did that until I couldn't.
Until you couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd listened to my friend Steve. I wish I'd had ears to hear, honestly. It took me a while. But thanks for planting the seed.
I'm happy to be with you, Kevin. Thanks for having me with you today. I've followed you. I'm thrilled about the unfolding of your life, and I'm glad for this conversation.
I want to feel that I have been greening. And let's start there. Man, that's the title of this book. It's one thing that you decided to do a book with poetry. We'll get into that in a second. But give us your explanation of greening.
Yeah. After I left you and after living in Colorado for over 20 years, every year I lived there, Kevin, I got older. I don't think you did, but I got older. And it came time for Gwen and I to try to look at our off-ramp. And so we moved to North Carolina, which was our home. And about the time we came here, COVID kind of plunged in around us, shut us down. We didn't get a good restart. We couldn't put down roots in the town we were trying to live in. And it became a really dark time. I had two medical crises in my life. And it was kind of one thing after the other. And it's what I would call the dark ages of my life. After I left you, I really plummeted into a dark time. I had left the ministry that we had founded, the ministry that you and our friends came to visit so many times, a beautiful retreat over in Colorado. And it was really a dark time of reestablishing myself, kind of fighting for my life. And come to find out, an old Benedictine monk by the name of Hildegard of Bingen, who lived in the 12th century, wrote about the Dark Ages and this phenomenon that she called greening. And I found her words to be so captivating and enthralling that a person could green. And Kevin, I'm chunks ahead of you in age chronology. I'm 71 as we're recording this. And for a man to green in his 70s is quite a phenomenon, because we're used to people burning out and dying out and fading away. But what happened to me once we relocated to the mountains of Western North Carolina — I live right outside of Asheville in a little town called Brevard — I began to green. I began to feel this spurt of new life, of vibrancy, of greening, of tendrils kind of coming out of the stump of my life. And my eyes were opening. It was like an awakening, similar to what I think you've probably been experiencing, an awakening in our life. That term gets a lot of bad rap politically, but come to find out, so many writers throughout all of the history of the world have referred to this idea of waking up and greening in our life. I love this quote by Antonio Machado, a Spanish poet who lived a long time ago. He said, "All the words of Christ can be reduced to two: wake up." And so in my life, after leaving a ministry I founded, after writing a plethora of a dozen books and leading an organization, developing a staff, and then withering and going into kind of a stump life, this inner renewal began to happen. It's more than spiritual. It was intellectual. It was feeling relationally connected again in my life. And so the book of greening, this book we're going to talk about today, really was birthed out of my own experience to show some of the tumultuous seasons of our lives. And I began to write poems out of this time of darkening, out of this time of wintering, out of this time of being a stump, and then morphing in the beauty of Western North Carolina into this phenomenon called greening.
Thanks, Steve. An aspect that I really honor is your testimony to a further awakening in your life at this later age.
I call it my tender age.
Okay, let's call it that. I just honor that concept. One of my favored philosophers, I'll call him Anthony DeMello.
Love him.
He talks, I think it's in his book Awakening, where he references, I think he was giving a talk. He was giving a lecture. And afterwards has a guy come up to him, and I can't remember if the guy was 70 or 90, but an older guy, and says, "Anthony, thank you for sharing about whatever it was. I've had it wrong all this time. Thanks." Resonated. A concept has always resonated with me, because I want to be that. I want to be at whatever age I am, realizing that I don't know what I don't know. Our friend Randy James, functional medicine doctor Randy James, he says, man, that's the most dangerous thing, is we don't know what we don't know. And so to awaken, I don't know, that feels like the daily, God give me reveal. Would that track?
I think it shows a lot that we're in a constant state of revelation, and epiphany. If this podcast comes out in January, this is the time of epiphany, where those great wise people traveled and they followed a star. And life is about waking up, waking up in marriage, waking up in vocational journey, letting your life speak, letting your life matter. And you and Randy were a great part of my life of waking up in my health. As a Southerner, I didn't know much about being awake to my own body. I'm late in discovering these things, Kevin, but the beauty of it is that it's never too late, that awakenings and greenings can happen in our own personal life and our families and our relationships. When you get tired of living in the shallows, when you get tired of the burnout, when you get tired of the hamster wheel, there is something more to life. And greening for me, I love that metaphor of greening because it's it's earthy, it's rooted in nature. It's not mechanical, it's not 5 steps or 7 habits. It's an earthy, natural metaphor that a man or a woman, a child, a teenager in this socially media addicted world can find their heart again and live with heart and live with life in them. And the great poet, Mary Oliver, who I know you've read and I love, she's a mentor to me in so many ways, but we have one wild and precious life. And in the world that we're living in, with such political discord, with such upheaval socially, with so many problems, the addiction rampant, with mental health crises that so many in our own families are suffering from, the great hope we have on this little blue dot of the universe, Randy, is to actually experience a little bit of greening in our lives. That's not too much to ask. That's really, I think, what the God of the universe wants for us, to live fully alive and as fully awake as we can be to our own life. Otherwise, we're going to miss it. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is our opportunity. This is our invitation.
Okay, on that note, the tagline of your book, Poems in the Unfolding of Our Lives, I caught myself just with that word, unfolding. The unfolding.
What'd
That
you like about that?
it spoke, the word spoke to me of, I can, as a book, I can remain folded. I can remain closed. This is me. I am what I am. My life is what it is. And I can stay stuck. And I think as I consider my life, that there were some areas of my life that were folded. They were, even to the point of I had figured them out, I was
That's
certain.
right. That's right. We
And
live
now, yeah,
that what I call the sin of certainty, Randy.
yeah,
We think we're right. And there that kind of goes chronologically in our 20s, in our 30s. I've got 4 men children, all in their 30s and 40s. And I watch them live with a sense of certainty. And what I know in my own life is the older I get, the less I know. And so I'm wanting to lay aside some of the sin of certainty so that I can live with a little bit of mystery, a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of holding my hands up and say, I don't know what's going to happen. It's living more in the big picture of what I call mystery, and accepting that there are many things in this life that we just don't know. We're only the latest right now. We're the latest pilgrims who have navigated this great path that we call life, and we're doing the best we can, but some of us have closed down.
yeah,
Some things have happened to us. The rug has been pulled out from under us, health wise, getting a diagnosis, getting a notice from your spouse, a divorce, a child that's gone haywire or a prodigal, and it drops us to our knees. And so the unfolding is really the phenomenon of really being dropped to your knees. For me, I use the metaphor of pruning. And so in the first section of the book, many of the poems are about pruning. I didn't write that theme mechanically or because, oh, I need to be writing about pruning. What I did was I started writing poetry, and when I knew I was going to publish the book, my editor said, let's see what themes these poems are falling in. And about half of them, believe it or not, fell in the category of pruning.
mm,
And that's that phenomenon in the natural world of being cut back, of taking a grapevine and pruning with shears the excess, getting rid of the excess. And in my life, Randy, after living a wonderful life, having a great ministry, I came to a place once I left Colorado that I needed to be pruned. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. It was uninvited. But in that pruning, I came awake to my stumpness, to my, like a tree being cut down. And out of that stump came little tendrils of new life. And that's what I began to watch. And that's where I began to write out of that tendrilness, out of new life bubbling up, new life in a 47-year-old marriage, new life in my relationship with my adult sons. I thought parenting 2-year-olds was hard, but Kevin, come to find out parenting adult children is a lot harder than parenting 2-year-olds. And so greening has been happening in every part of my life, physically, emotionally, vocationally, and spiritually.
Okay, Steve, I was going to, if you look at this time, so where are we at? 4 years ago, 5 years ago that you moved there and you have this, what you call a dark season. If you look from then to now, what are some perspectives? What are some primary or highlight perspectives? I don't know how you would label them. Could be perspectives, could be beliefs, could be blindness, blind areas. What are some things that come to mind for you that this is Steve back then has changed now? He perceives X differently or believes X differently or is now awake to X that you weren't before?
Good question. I'm careful not to say, and I don't want to give impressions that there are stages and phases and steps to this. That's why I like the natural metaphor. For me, Kevin, it really came down to when I got slammed, when I had to have 2 operations, when I left my world, left my friends, left a ministry I had started, it became really dark. And the key for me came by noticing, and this beautiful word, Kevin, curiosity. Curiosity, when the world feels like it's done you in and the rug's been pulled out from under you, rather than dying and laying down and going into massive depression, which we're entitled to and we can. But I think the way out is in. The way out of a hard time is to go into that hard time. And for me, the way out became to go into my pruning and to become curious about it. I like that old story in the book of the Bible, the Old Testament, named Exodus, where we're told about Moses, who was on the backside of a mountain, similar to how I am here and how you are, Kevin, in Woodland Park there. But he lived on the backside of a mountain. That means he was alone. That means he wasn't in the hubbub of city life. He was by himself. And his own life became a teacher for him. And he became curious. We're told in Exodus 3, he saw a bush that was blazing and he went aside. He turned aside with curiosity and he looked at that bush. And that's what I think the first step of a greening process is, Kevin, to look with curiosity. If the world has collapsed, if your health is in danger, if your spouse has walked out on you, if you've just gotten fired, if you don't know what end is up, become curious. Like the Sufi poet and mystic says, live the questions. Start living the questions. Start asking yourself, what the heck or what the hell has happened to me? What am I feeling? The way out is in. Go inside and look at what's happening in this beautiful 4-quadrant organ that we have in our bodies called the human heart. Those 4 quadrants, each one with a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of pain, a little bit of woundedness, but a lot of vibrancy, and become curious. What makes you come alive? What's your big why in life? Why do you want to live? What's your great intention in life? Start with the questions. Don't look for the answers. That's the shortcut. That's where we make the mistakes. We want the quick fix. We want a shot of Novocaine or morphine so we don't have to be in pain. But to go into the pain, Kevin, is where the answer. It's the light. It's what the Quakers called that inner light, to go into your own heart and find the light that God, the creator of the universe, has given to each person, and to start there and become curious and to start noticing, what am I feeling? What's going on? I like that.
Steve, I think so. A poem of yours that's not in this book, The Sin of Certainty, which our dear friend Dustin Hibbard sent to me, and I resonated completely with that certainty. The Kevin that you talked to 6 years ago, however long it was, 7, who argued to be in the Whitewater, was good-hearted guy, meant well, but was certain, much more certain than curious. And as you
how
talk
do you think
now,
you became, how did you do the movement in your own life from certainty to curiosity? What, as you look back on it, what kind of forced you, what tied, put your arm behind your back so you had to surrender to these questions and start to live with curiosity?
I wish, Steve, I could say it was a moment of great enlightenment and spirituality and holiness and maturity. But unfortunately, it was, as you said, I was forced. I was forced by circumstances that I participated in making worse. And what I'm going to say, I could make the list, but what the list culminates to is the deconstructing or unraveling of my identity, which I was then left to grasp for or let go of. I was going to say I chose to. That's probably a questionable state in whether I chose or whether I was led, but
I think it's one of invitation. You were invited to start asking deep questions about your own life. Who the heck is Kevin Miller?
thanks. I'll go with invited. Let's go with invited.
Love invited.
And I'm just forever grateful that I perceive that I accepted that invitation and am now curious. So when the hard thing, the challenge comes up, I did not go in before. The way out for me then was, let's find another way out and just go. Whitewater.
We're always looking for escape hatches.
Always go. Yes. Escape and go to the next thing. And now it feels like a 180, Steve. Talk about an awakening. It feels that the concept feels like a 180 of now I am curious, and the looking for the way out, I exhaust myself with. It's like I've lost the energy to go out, and being in the curious aspect. It's one of my favorite words. Curious.
Curiosity. It's so important. And that's why, Kevin, there's so much discord politically. You know, families are torn apart, businesses are fractured, 90% of all partnerships fail. We don't know how to do this well. And if in this political tension that we are living, if we could become curious about our friend that's on the opposite side, rather than trying to change their mind or give them 5 reasons they shouldn't believe in this anymore, or start thinking this way, to become curious. How did you frame your history here? How did you come to know what you know? Curiosity is the key, Kevin, that unlocks all the the locks. It unlocked it for Moses, and God took that opportunity with Moses to tell him his name, because curious Moses asked some questions, and God, the creator, began to see those questions as invitations, just like you did, just like I've had to do.
Mm.
No one is immune. No one gets a pass card, Kevin, on asking questions about life. What's the purpose? Because we're seeing now in this day and age, 2026, in the new year, people are filled and just plagued with anxiety, fretfulness, disenchantedness, disillusionment, depression. And I think it's not going to get better until it probably gets a lot worse, and it wakes us up to find deeper answers.
A primary focus of mine today, coming from my own story and being privy to so many other people's stories, whether it's the guests on my show or the audience or my own family, looking at what you just said, the culture, the anxiety, I perceive, Steve, my experience with myself and with the culture is that we have become the most insecure culture maybe ever. We're insecure. And so coming back to the unraveling of identity, I haven't actually thought about it in this way till now. Let me think on it here. That to be curious, authentically curious, as opposed to that intent and looking for a way out, to sit and be curious maybe requires, see how this tracks, maybe requires us to have a level of security. If I am insecure, I am not curious. I am grasping. I am looking for certainty. I am to be curious. Now that as I continue to work to secure me, my identity, let go of that anxiety, then I can be curious. How's that track?
I like it. I think Paul Tillich, one of the theologians, American theologians, said what you're saying. He put it in this way: we need to find the ground of our being. And through brokenness, Kevin, when we're cut down, when something happens, when we're fired, when a child commits suicide, when a prodigal child goes off to the deep end, when your spouse leaves you, when you're given the pink slip at work, when something happens to jar you, it takes jarring, Kevin. It takes pruning. And no greening happens in our life. There's a sentence I wrote in the book that just says there's no flourishing, no vibrancy, no greening, no real lasting reaping without some form of pruning. And this is a day and age which I think even nationally, this is true. Again, the Old Testament, the New Testament, history is full of countries and nations that have had to be pruned. And, there's that famous verse in Second Chronicles. My background is from the Judeo-Christian beliefs, Kevin. That's what has formed much of my thinking. A lot of that I'm recovering from. A lot of that I've deconstructed from. And so I've been really jarred to go back to my roots, but turning from our ways and giving up false securities. That's another way of saying it. Giving up false securities and our name tag and what's our resume and our pedigree and our education. Those are all false securities. I mean, look, the smartest people, the smartest men and women in the United States, we're not together on the answers here. There's people on both sides of the equation. And the church is splintering. The church is weakened. It doesn't have really a strong footing because the church is just espousing certainties again and indoctrinating people. Kevin, this is why I like the word education.
You said it takes jarring.
It takes jarring. Yeah.
That rings true for me.
Jarring to even technologically, it unfreezes us so that we begin to feel. And I was going to say before we froze on our computers that education, that word literally means pulling out from within. That's the literal meaning of education, pulling out the truth that is in our hearts. That's the core of Celtic spirituality, Kevin, that the Celts over in Ireland and Scotland, I was just over there a few months ago, they believe that every human soul has a deep knowing, a deep knowing. And sometimes this superfluous stuff that gets around us, this entrapments of our pedigrees and our jobs and our 50, our retirement accounts and all of this, until we're jarred, we will remain asleep. We will remain asleep, and we will call that a life. But jarring wakes us up. Some kind of pain. This is the great teaching of Richard Rohr. He says there's only two things, Kevin, that will really wake us up. One is pain, and the other is divine love. And when we feel love, when we're cut back, and I think this is probably my own story of after I left Colorado, after I pioneered and built a worldwide ministry and came here, it really was the pain that began to awaken me and the love that I found in creation and the creator. It woke me up. It brought me back, and it assuaged the deep pain in my own life. And I think it does that for people. I'm a big advocate, Kevin, for getting out and being in nature and letting nature assume the rightful place as teacher to reveal to us the greatness of this life, the greatness of creation. And the Bible itself even says that, the ancients even said that creation was the first teacher, the Bible second. And I love that in creation, we can see the glory of God. And then years later, the Bible comes along and tells us about it, but we forget. This is why the old ancients said, let birds be our teachers and flowers our theologians. We got to get outside. We're spending so much time scrolling and doom scrolling. People are walking through nature, Kevin, with earbuds and headphones on. We've learned how to tune out the natural world. And I think we're in threat. This is a big threat to our soul, to our own vibrancy, when we can't hear our own heartbeat and ask good questions of each other and take time and linger with these questions. This is all a part of the process of greening and waking up.
Steve, I think I've surrounded myself with national forest, maybe because I need it more than anyone else.
I'm with you.
I got a question for you, though. A pondering here. I have experienced the most significant awakenings in my life in response to being jarred, pain. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't want to feel, I don't want to think that I fear pain. I want to think that I'm actually more accepting and able to deal with it today than ever. That said, I also would like to think that as I wake up more, as I evolve more, as I become more secure with me, that I can have I can have more awakenings, further awakenings that don't require pain to awake me, but that I can come to from, as you said a minute ago, from love. Thoughts?
Because you become more sensitive. Pain makes you more sensitive. And when you've been jarred, you don't need to be jarred every single day or one day out of 7. Maybe once is enough. In my case, I've had, maybe because it's just me and my stubbornness, I've had to be jarred several times in my life.
Me too. I'm just questioning if that has to continue. Can I jar myself out of love instead of waiting for a pain to force me?
I think you become more more sensitive to what's really going on. And that word sensitive and curious, you become more curious to what's really happening in here. It's like Hildegard of Bingen in the 12th century, where she wrote that on greening. She said, if you fall in love with creation, what will happen? If you love the outdoors, then your desire to take care of the outdoors will be birthed in you. And that's my case. I've fallen in love with nature. Now I really want to take care of it and take care of it before it's too late. So I become more sensitive. I care more in it. And so really through that pain, through that pathology, which the root word of pathology is from pain. It's going into the pain with curiosity. Are you worthy to be loved? Not love because someone told you, but how have you found love? Is it through your work? Or in my case, Kevin, I became a workaholic because I wasn't squared away here. I just thought the way I'll be validated as a man is through my work. So I pedaled hard, I pedaled fast, I pedaled on a hamster wheel, and I just spun that to get everything out of it. But I began to make sausage on my sausage machine. Even my ministry machine became a sausage maker. And then I woke up and I just thought, I shouldn't be making sausage here. There's something more going on. And this is the beautiful part of paying attention to your life.
Yeah.
And I think every day, if we learn to pay attention to our heart, there's an old guy named Ignatius who was a Spanish soldier, and he taught us, Kevin, to pay attention to our heart in two categories. He called it the examine. Every day to give yourself a daily examine. And it goes like this: where in my day have I experienced the beautiful, capital B? Not a flower or not a yellow bird or a finch, but something magnanimous, some sense of awe. Where have I experienced the beautiful? And the second is, where have I experienced the brutal? Paying attention. And Gwen and I have coached families, Kevin, to do this conversation, the daily examine, over a dinner table, over couples having dinner, with your journal if you're by yourself, with your friend, to ask yourself those two questions. Where have I experienced the beautiful? And where have I experienced the brutal? He had bigger words for it. He called it consolation and desolation. But in America, we speak kind of street language, and I love just to break it down. Where have I experienced the beautiful, and where have I experienced the brutal? And when we learn to talk that way, we are talking from our heart. We're in the deep water, and we'll begin to talk not just factuals, not here's what I did today, and these are the 5 people I talked to today, not giving our families, our spouses, the chronology, but giving our spouses and our friends, our brotherhood, our hearts. This has been the beautiful, and this has been the brutal. I love those questions. And that is what fosters awakening. That's what fosters curiosity, to explore that as much as you can. I think every day. He said it, to do it every day. He actually said, Kevin, when he wrote this up in the 16th century, if you practice the daily examine every day for 3 months, your life will be changed forever. And I think that's the invitation to wake up. And that's what you had to do. It's what I had to do. When you get jarred, you start paying attention. You start noticing, oh, the bird. You start noticing right outside my window here, the beech trees. I would look at them every day, and I see that they're the last trees to lose their leaves. In Colorado, we notice that the aspens all grow in community. You never find one aspen. We begin to notice the world, and then we begin to notice the aliveness or the deadness of our heart.
Steve, you just said the word notice a couple times, and a moment ago you equated love to becoming more sensitive. You said paying attention to our life. I remember starkly a moment within the past few years when, for me, somebody who believed in, was certain about no limits, no, no excuses, be tough, be strong, all that stuff. And I realized, wait a minute, I don't want to be, that felt insensitive. I want to be more sensitive. It was one of those 180 jarrings of going, holy smokes. Mm-hmm. And being sensitive, I want to be more sensitive. And so you're equating, love and curiosity and sensitivity. And yet, as you talked about, we seem to look to be in a culture that is becoming less sensitive than ever. It's the opposite. We've had this call, just do it. No fear. Those are not sensitive statements. Those are not sensitive mantras and rally cries.
And what I like about this, Kevin, is you and I, here we are, two men having conversation on being sensitive, being awake. And a lot of times we think, oh, this is just for women to talk this way, but it's really not. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we are very complex people. We are complex creations of divinity. And in our complexity, the more we know ourselves, Kevin, the more we'll know what we really want, our desires, what we really want in life, our longings, our yearnings, our desires, and we'll begin to explore those. And from those desires will come our greening. This is for me, like one of my desires this year is to be a person who says yes more than no. I was trained in a religion that said no to me a lot. You can't do that. You can't do this. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. And it just hit me recently that I want to be a person to counter that. I want to be a person of yes. I want to say yes to myself. I want to say yes to my wife. I want to say yes to my 14 grandkids. I want to say yes to my 4 adult sons and their wives. I want to say yes to my friends. And Gwen and I are trying to live this, Kevin, at our age, to live with no regrets. Being a person who is greening, to learn to say yes to yourself and yes to your spouse, it's a good thing. And it's a good thing to live with the yes, because we've just heard no so much in our life. We've been shaped by no. You can't do this. You shouldn't do this. And, I think we need to, I'm not asking for us to turn into Joel Osteen. That's not where I'm going with this, to where we live, out of an illusion that there aren't any problems in life. But to live with no regrets is a huge resolution. It's a huge, great intention for me at 71 to say, my time is limited. I don't, chronologically, statistically, I don't have the time that you have, Kevin. So this is my time every day to say yes to myself. And thanks to Randy James, I'm learning to say yes to my health, waking up to my health every day, saying, I'm going to choose what I really want. And what I want used to be double stuffed Oreos. You knew me in a time of my life where I wanted double stuffed Oreos. Now I want my health. I want to really live longer, because I think my grandkids are going to need an older voice in their life. They're going to need a sage-like figure, and I want to be there for them, Kevin. So that motivates me to want to be healthy. It motivates me in my relationship with Gwen to choose health and to choose living within my means so I can be healthy and not live like I don't have limits. We have limits. We have limits. The only thing that is unlimited, I think, is the creator of the universe. All creation has limits. And learning to accept and embrace those limits are so important.
Steve, this book, Greening, Poetry, which, as you say in, I think, the intro, the concept of poetry to say more with less, I've continued to find value with. Mm-hmm. Interesting that you mentioned not to pick on the guy, but Joel Osteen, and the best life, your best life now. That's my perspective. I am finding more of my best life now with the consummate less, not more. Less, or less is more. However you want to play with that, but literally the pruning, that to get rid of the excess. I've so exhausted myself with
That's what
excess.
happens. We live in a state of perpetual exhaustion.
Yeah.
And the exhausted life, Kevin, is not the abundant life. And we have to reframe this. And, I think even the American church has exhausted itself with bigger and better and light shows and smoke screens to manufacture spirituality rather than allowing the organic spiritual aliveness that we can feel when we're going outside, we see a sunset, when we're walking in nature. The other day, Gwen and I were walking down our river here that the Cherokees used to walk in, the Cherokee Native American folks in North Carolina, and a kingfisher came flying down the river, and Gwen and I noticed him. Then he flew down about another 100 feet, and it was like he was inviting us to go further and deeper into his world. We followed that kingfisher, and we just let nature guide us. And it opened up this conversation between Gwen and I about what's guiding us, what is waking us up. A while ago, Gwen and I were walking on that river, and I said, Gwen, what took us so long to get here? Why did it take us so long to get here? Not just to North Carolina, but to be alive, to wake up. And Gwen, Kevin, you know her well too. You're a friend of hers. But she said something to me, Steve, it took all of those seasons of our life to get us here. It took everything. It took my addiction as a mega pastor. It took my workaholism that came out again at Potter's Inn and building and writing so many books. It took all of that to get us to where we are now. And this is why we need to make peace with our past, Kevin, and our life. That's a part of greening, is not try to cut these things off and cut off our arms or cut off this chapter of our life. In my life, and so many people that I work with, Kevin, they've got a big chapter of fundamentalism and such conservatism that is just a worship of the Bible. It's the Bible becomes the fourth member of the Trinity. And it's like people are really waking up to these type of things that won't work. I like that word deconstruction, because some of it we need to get rid of what doesn't work and really what isn't true. The Bible isn't the fourth member of the Trinity. Three's enough from a Christian point of view, and we don't need more indoctrination. We don't need to be told what we have to believe. We need to find it for ourselves. And this is the beauty of, I think, the good news for us is to find that truth, to let every person be a pilgrim, every person to find their sense of home, and to believe that God is big enough to woo and pursue and love each one of us, Kevin, till we finally get home, and we get home before it's too dark.
Steve, I appreciate and resonate with your perspective on the Bible. I read the little cliche recently, an analogy of the Bible, in essence, or religion, or whatever you want to call it, being the finger pointing to, it was an analogy of the finger pointing to the moon. You're trying to show somebody the moon and you point to it. Well, the focus isn't your finger pointing, it's the moon. The focus isn't the Bible, it's pointing to God. That's the focus. And so
it is the focus.
Continues to be a concept I enamor myself with. You also on that concept, Steve, of deconstruction. And you mentioned a minute ago, bigger and better. Even the church seems to espouse that bigger, better. And I have, in my own journey, again, kind of a paradigm shift of not adding more, constantly adding more, even knowledge, information. Am I adding more? I feel like as time goes on, I don't think I'm adding more. I may be finding out new understandings that are not really adding, they're helping me let go of crap. Back to pruning. I think I feel more fulfillment from the pruning itself. Even that, Steve, the idea in my head has been with pruning that you prune something back so it grows bigger and fuller. And I still, it's okay. But to some degree, I almost feel like, man, I want to prune stuff back. I'm not looking for more. I'm not looking, am I happier? Maybe just, I don't know if it's a good analogy. I don't want to just be a stump. You get my point though. Play with that. If there's some aspect, I don't want to add more stuff. I want to get rid of that stuff and be rid.
Yeah, let me be specific here. I mean, I think that's true when it comes to our faith, Kevin, that we need to find the non-negotiables. There was an old man that lived in the 16th century, and he gave the greatest philosophy. He said, in essentials, let's have unity. In non-essentials, let's have liberty. But in all things, let's have charity. In essentials, unity. In non-essentials, liberty. And in all things, charity. And I think when it comes to simplicity, there's a poem in the book Greening, Kevin, where I talk about the Bible. I just want the red letters. I need the red letters. And that's for people that don't know what that means. In the Bible, there are these versions where just the statements of Jesus are put in red ink. And I love that because that's what brings us to life. That's what brings us to life. There was a time in my life when I was working on my workaholism that I was told by my mentor, Dallas Willard, to read only the red letters for a whole year. So I went out and bought a red letter Bible. I didn't have one. And I just read the words of Jesus. And those are the things that brought me back to life. I think we've made such a big deal on water baptism and all these different beliefs. They just split the church. The church is just splintered. It's lost its zest. It's lost its ability to speak into a broken world because we've majored on the minors. And what could we do if we just lived with the Beatitudes, Kevin? It just dawned on me that, all these people, I go to a church where we say a creed, we say the Apostles' Creed, but I wish we could rewrite creeds and say, I believe in the Beatitudes. I believe that blessed are the poor in heart, for they'll be rich with God. The way Eugene Peterson says it, you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope, because when you're at the end of your rope, there's less of you and more of God. I believe in the Beatitudes. And sometimes in a world of discord where nobody's agreeing, we can agree on the absolute essentials. And that'd be such a rich discussion. What do you think they really are? What do you really need to believe? And I think it's probably less than we can ever realize. And we need to come back to the essentials. And that's why, again, the thing that I like the most about this book, Greening, Kevin, is the organic, natural, rooted, earthy way. You and I are both shaped by Stephen Covey, and I know we read his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I believed in all of them. But I love this natural way, this seasonal way of understanding truth in seasons. And even just realizing that we're not in control of the seasons. And there's sometimes, like, I'm in the fall of my life. There's a lot of letting go, Kevin. And I need to be like the leaves, the trees on the leaves. I need to learn how to let go of my leaves rather than holding on. And the letting go, there's freedom. And the letting go, there's realness. And the letting go, I'm really yielding to the whole circle of life and saying, I'm not in control here.
Steve, that concept, I pursued the concept of letting go for a long time, but I couldn't grasp the concept until I think in some of the jarring, I realized how much I was clinging to so many things and how tired I was of clinging, just how tired. And now I look at the things that I had clung to and again, to use that word again, I exhaust myself just to look at them.
Mhm.
So exhausting to hold on, to cling to those things that my identity was built upon. And now that
Absolutely.
I was jarred out of some of those things, what you just said, the freedom, the
Yeah,
deep breath.
you use the word clinging there, Kevin, and clinging is another form of control. It's like
Yeah.
anybody that has gone to a 12-step program, anybody that struggled through any addiction, that's the first step, that we are powerless and we let go, and we're really learning to let go. There's a poem in Greening about that. And so I've had to really wrestle with, what does it mean to let go of what I want for my children, let go of what I want, that they're making decisions, or I see the way they parent. And it's like, oh my goodness, what's happening? This is not at all the way we taught you, or something like that. It's just like, I need to right size my life as a man. I need to right size my life in my view of women, in my view of church, in my view of politics, in my view of friendship. I need to right size my life. And that does not mean getting bigger. It really, for me, means to become smaller, and to just with less of me, and to just realize I'm just the, like the flute. I'm just the instrument through which this wind is playing. Even now, I'm just the instrument. This is not about me. This is not about us, Kevin. There's a bigger story going on, and we embrace that in the beautiful metaphors and the nuance of the natural world. And again, I think Hildegard, back in her dark age as a woman, she became so prolific, and she became a natural healer, homeo. Randy would love her. I hope Randy's listening to this, but she began to talk about the natural world healing the body. That just in Western medicine, we don't know everything. In Western politics, we don't know everything. In Western Christianity, we don't know everything. Isn't that interesting that
Mhm.
in the East, in Eastern religions, when they painted the human heart, it was painted with green paint, not red? And I find that so fascinating. People that are listening to us know this about color and the theory of colors, that green is really the color of life. And, Gwen and I both, I liked red and she liked the color blue, but now green it's on everything. It's the cover of the book. It's like there's so much, Kevin, in the greening. I wonder if you could could I read a poem in the book about a prayer and letting go? It's on
Yes.
page 22 if you've got your book,
Got it
Kevin.
right here.
But this is the prayer of letting go. As I let go, may I be held. As I lie down in exhaustion, please pick me up in strength. As I release, do not release me. As I loosen my grip, tighten the space of your presence. As I fall apart, pick up my shattered pieces. As I watch you from afar, draw near to be inside my mind. As I embrace my aloneness, be ever present with me. As I fill up with anxiety, drain me of my worry. As I flounder in my grief, help me find the rock on which to stand. As I confess my desolations, remind me that you are my consolation. As I search for peace, please just show up. As I close my eyes at night, may I be open to you in my sleep. These are poems, Kevin, that out of my pruning, I would sit up here in my office. I'm kind of in a glass tree house, as you can see behind me, and I began to watch the trees, and I began to realize I'm no better than the tree. I need to learn and how they bud, how they come to life, how they shed their leaves, how they stand in all their glory in the summertime. But everything has a rhythm. Everything has a season. We can't always be um, slaves to productivity. And, it's learning to live in that rhythm of nature that has just meant the world to me. I just commend our listeners to think more, become curious more about this whole conversation. We're in such a hurry, and hurry is something we need to ruthlessly eradicate from our life, Kevin. And that's what jarring wakes us up. It wakes us up. We can't hurry when we're given a bad diagnosis, a hard diagnosis. We That diagnosis, that pain will wake us up. Pain is not the end. It's really our healing and our wholeness that we're after.
Steve, thanks. Thanks for your heart, for putting it into this book. I've been using it kind of like a daily devotion to read the poems and to feel that it is I perceive it where I'm at right now as a gentle and compassionate daily jarring. Invitation. Let's go with invitation, as you said before.
A daily invitation. I like that. And that would be such a good mantra to wake up, get your coffee. What's my invitation today?
Yeah.
What is my greater invitation? Kevin, that's your next book. You write that book.
All right. Maybe you can endorse it for me. Steve, just thanks. Thanks for
Hey,
it's
thank
such a
you.
gift to reconnect and to glean from you. Thank you. Just
You're
thanks.
so welcome. Can I mention how folks can get the book?
Please.
You just go to Amazon.com and type in Greening poems or Greening Smith, and it'll come right up. It's available there and also on our website. I'm writing more poems. The poem that you just mentioned that you love so much, The Sin of Certainty, is now on my Substack. So pottersend.substack.com, pottersend.substack.com. Those are the ways that you can find me. But Kevin, welcome to the greening journey. You're my greening friend and you're my greening companion. And I love the word companion, as at this stage of our life, that word means two beggars begging for the same thing, literally compagnon, begging for bread in French. And you and I are begging for the bread to green our hearts, to make us alive. And I love you. Your heart is rare and precious, and it is broken, but greening is your journey, my dear friend. Greening is our journey.
Thanks for being a part of my journey, Steve.
I'm so honored to be.
Love you, brother. Thanks.
Love you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. Again, that is Steve Smith, Steve W. Smith. And the poetry book, if you want to check that out, that you heard him read from, is again, Greening, like the color green, Greening, Poems in the Unfolding of Our Lives. And you can find the book and find Steve and all that he and his wife Gwen provide at pottersinn.com. Till next time, here's to the evolving you and me.